Alright, in this video we are going to talk about the next tab on the Chrome Developer Tools, which is the Console tab. So we got a lot to cover here. I'm going to kind of try to fly through as much as I can. So to start off with, we want to open the DevTools to the console. You can go ahead and use the right click with the mouse, or we can do Command Option J to get to the console. For Linux and Windows users, that's Control Shift J. That'll open up the console. So basically, in its simplest form, what we have here is a JavaScript REPL. So you could do, like var a equals a string of foo, then you could print out a. You can do all sorts of stuff here. Another interesting thing is if you ever need to do multi-line, so you could do like function bar, you can just shift enter, console.log hello, something like that, shift enter and close it off, and then I could go ahead and run bar and it'll log hello. So you can do all sorts of stuff like that. The basic idea here, you get a JavaScript REPL. It can also interact with the DOM of whatever page you're on. And it can really do a lot more than that. So I guess let's dive in a little bit. Another thing that's worth noting, because console is probably the tab that I use most, in Canary, and I think in the latest builds of regular Chrome, you can now access console from any of the other panels. So if you're over here in Elements, let's say, and you hit the escape button, it'll bring up this little console, what they call the drawer here. Let me go ahead and make that a little bit bigger. And so that's really cool. You can be on Elements and you can just hit escape to hide and show the console drawer. We can do the same thing. Another thing that's worth mentioning, it's got a clear method. So you can go ahead and clear the screen. I believe that, Command K or Control K on Windows also works. So if you had a bunch of stuff here and you hit Command K, it'll go ahead and clear it, and escape will hide it again. So yeah, that's pretty cool. This is basically where things go. If you have some code that, console.logs, this is where you'll find it in this console here. So a lot of people know about console log. There's also a bunch more ways of console printing information. So if we go ahead and do console dot, we can see all the different things. It's got an assert, which is really nice. We'll cover that in a minute. You can use that for some really basic tests. We've got console.error, something went wrong, and it actually gives you this error. Console.error is nice because it gives you a stack trace. So if you put console.error somewhere in your code, you can actually see a stack trace of what happened. Log we see here, table we'll cover in a minute, and then there's also warn. So console.warn, something unimportant went wrong. So I recommend using these a little bit more than just console logging things. One thing that's nice is if you put a bunch of console logs and warns and errors throughout your app, and then you get too much information, you can go ahead and click this filter up here. So you could show something like only show me the errors or only show me the warnings, something like that, which is really nice and makes kind of looking through a lot easier. So go back and select all and hide the filter. So yeah, that's pretty cool. There's you can also do things like you can do document stuff, so you could see like document and you can see what all the methods and keys that we have on here. So you could do something like var foo equals document.create element, and you could create a paragraph tag or something like that, and you could go ahead and append things to it or prepend things to it. At any time you could console log foo and you'll get back this actual paragraph tag. So yeah, you can do a lot of really cool interacting stuff, right there in your console. Another thing that I do use a lot is the console.assert. So basically this is like a really, really, really minimal testing tool, but honestly it's all you need to get started. So you can do console.assert, and then you can go ahead and assert, like foo, equals bar, something like that. And that'll fail, but foo equals foo. And all of these will work as well with actual fragments from the document, which we'll see in a little bit. So that's pretty cool. Trying to think of anything else I wanted to cover before we dive in too much. I guess the last thing I wanted to cover with the console, we saw log and assert and warn and error, but there's also console.table, which is really nice. So you can go ahead and console.table, and then you can pass in, like an array of objects or something like that, or even an array of arrays. So you've got like, let's say 1, 2, 3, and then we compare that with 2, 3, 4, something like that. So we pass it in this array, and this array happens to just contain 2 different arrays, and it'll console table out our 1, 2, 3, and 2, 3, 4. You can do all sorts of cool stuff with that. So you could also have strings or booleans or anything like that in there. This is just a kind of nice way, like if you're comparing, I don't know, the contents of 2 elements or something like that. Console.table is a really nice way to do that. They have all this kind of cool string substitution and stuff like that. I don't use it all that often, but I have seen some people using it. So you can like console.log, and then you can do, like, if you're familiar with, like you can do this with JavaScript or Ruby or PHP too, but you can have this like kind of interpolated. So like s is, and then I don't know, like another variable like d years old or something like that, right? And then you could like pass in these things like John and 28 or something, and it'll actually go ahead and substitute those in. So basically, I guess kind of what I wanted to have shown here is that you're really able to do like all the things you can do with with JavaScript. You can do a bunch of extra stuff with the actual console itself, all from here pretty easily. Another one that's really good, there's a console.time, and so excuse me, basically console.time is used to analyze the efficiency of kind of any of your code. And so you could do like basically if you had some function in your code and you were wondering how long it took before it, you could console.time my thing is starting, and then run your code, and then at the end you could console.time and my thing is starting. So these are keys, and that'll show you this was how long it took between me typing those things. But if it were actually in your JavaScript code, it would actually show you how long it took to run. So I use this like when I'm doing web performance audits and things like that, and there's like maybe a big regular expression, I'm kind of wondering how long it takes to parse through. I'll put console.time at the beginning and a console.time end at the end, and these just have to match. So that could be foo or whatever. So yeah, that one's pretty useful. Let's see. I think the next thing that I kind of want to talk about is interacting with the actual document. So one thing that's cool, I'm going to go ahead and clear this, is that they've provided these kind of jQuery-like methods, like $ selectors, and these map directly to, so you can do like $, and then you could pass in like h1 or something like that. So this maps directly, it's the same thing as document query selector. Oops. Right, these are going to return the same things. And then you can also do $h1, and that is the same as query selector all. So the thing that you're seeing here is that these are actually working the same way, and that's because I have jQuery on this website. So you can see if I just print out $, if we went to a site, I'm trying to think of one, I think like Twitter doesn't have jQuery. Let me go here. Yeah, so Twitter doesn't have jQuery, so here would be it does. Anyway, if you were on a website that didn't have jQuery installed, so you type $, it would say undefined or whatever, then just doing $1 would only return the first item like this, and then $2 would return an array of all the different items. So that's pretty cool. Let me think. Okay, so I guess from here, the last thing I kind of wanted to talk about is moving back and forth between the elements panel and the console. One thing that I use all the time is, so if you come over to elements and you click on something like, let's say we click on this row header, then we can come back to console and we can do $0, and we'll see that this row header, so $0 is like an abbreviation for whatever the last thing clicked on over here would be. So you can kind of interact very nicely. You can bring things from the elements tab to the console tab. And then I kind of wanted to show also, if you click on about, now we go and we $0 and we get about, just like we'd expect, but if we $1, we get row header again. So it gives you 4 things that you can keep track of, the last 4 things you clicked on, and it just provides you a really easy way of, like I said, bringing something from the elements panel into the console if you want to mess with it or inspect it closer or anything like that. So I think those are the main things that I do in the console. Use it as a JavaScript REPL, interact with something, like you can add and remove classes here. Yeah, hope that helps.